Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. The nighttime industry reacts to the Prime Minister's move to make full vaccination a requirement for entry into nightclubs in England from September. The Defence Secretary announces that Britain will permanently deploy 2 warships in Asian waters after the Chinese regime's increasingly aggressive behaviour in the region. And the Royal Albert Hall reopens at full capacity after its longest closure since World War II. The government is receiving criticism over its decision to require full vaccination for entrance to nightclubs in England from the end of September. Nightclub owners say the government does not understand a modern club. Please note this video contains flashing images. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the story.
Nightclubs opened on Monday to the relief of those who for 16 months had not been able to enjoy the venues. But the Prime Minister's announcement the same day soon crashed the party. He said that those entering nightclubs in England from September must be fully vaccinated as a condition of entry. Those in the industry are reeling from the blow. In a statement, CEO of Nighttime Industries Association Michael Kill says, so Freedom Day for nightclubs lasted around 17 hours, then the announcement from the Prime Minister that COVID passports will be made mandatory for nightclubs in September comes after his Health Secretary said only 1 week ago that they would not be compulsory. What an absolute shambles. Kill says 80% of nightclubs don't want to implement COVID passports. They are worried about enforcing this system and think they'll see a reduction in spontaneous customers. In a previous interview, he told us that the government's own report into vaccine passports found they would be more trouble than they're worth.
Well, one of the challenges is with regard to COVID status certificates or COVID passports. We went through the process of consultation with senior ministers, feeding back from different industries on whether this would be a proportionate measure or mitigation that needed to be put in place.
The report was then published and concluded
the impact of implementing this sort of measure would be disproportionate to the public health benefit.
Co-founder of Recovery and the Nighttime Industries Association, Alan Miller, told us he thinks vaccine passports are discriminatory. Others in the industry are feeling frustrated. Peter Mark, CEO of Recom UK that runs 42 clubs and bars, said, to say we are disappointed by this government's U-turn is an understatement. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
MPs are urging the government to take action against the Chinese regime. This comes after the UK joined its Western allies on Monday to condemn cyber attacks by Chinese state-backed groups. NTD's Eddie Aiken has more on this.
This cyber attack by Chinese state-backed groups was reckless, but sadly a familiar pattern of behaviour. The Chinese government must end this systematic cyber sabotage and can expect to be held to account if it does not.
Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly responding to an urgent question in the House of Commons on Tuesday. Former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith also weighed in. He says the Chinese regime is a clear and present threat to the UK and to himself.
But I understand now that there is intelligence from the Five Eyes sources which shows that there is now a very active and direct threat from the Chinese government aimed directly at the co-chairs of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Some of these co-chairs, of which I am one, have now been warned by their intelligence services in receipt of this that they should be very careful and that they will be supported.
Labour accused the government of being unable to send a clear, coherent message to Beijing. Shadow Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy says ministers have been arguing among themselves over how to deal with the regime.
While the Foreign Secretary imposes sanctions, the Chancellor is cashing cheques. It's extraordinary that he can stand at the dispatch box today and refuse to tell us how he'll safeguard critical infrastructure or whether he and his colleagues will be boarding a plane to Beijing early next year to participate in a PR exercise.
Nandi said the UK needs a coherent strategy. Cleverly said the government will work with its allies to urge Beijing to change its behaviour and take further actions if necessary. On Monday, the government accused the Chinese regime of being responsible for a massive hacking attack earlier this year. The attack targeted Microsoft Exchange servers and affected at least 30,000 organisations around the world. Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
Britain will permanently deploy 2 warships in Asian waters after the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier's trip to the Indo-Pacific region. The Defence Secretary made the announcement today on a visit to Japan. NTD's Kos Temenes brings us the details.
As the Royal Navy's Carrier Strike Group sails to the Far East, the British government is sending stronger signals of its strategic tilt towards the Indo-Pacific region. On a visit to Tokyo, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the UK will deploy 2 ships in the region on a permanent basis.
Following on from the strike group's inaugural deployment, the United Kingdom will permanently assign 2 ships in the region from later this year, as well as contributing a littoral response group in the coming years to come.
In a recent policy review, the government said it will engage more deeply in the Indo-Pacific region in response to the Chinese regime's increasingly aggressive behavior. Wallace says Britain and Japan share a common interest in defending international order.
The UK's Indo-Pacific tilt has similar objectives to Japan's own long-standing free and open Indo-Pacific vision, as both our countries seek to protect and uphold the rules-based international order.
Britain's Carrier Strike Group, led by the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier, is on its maiden voyage to the Far East. Wallace told the Times newspaper that the British fleet will sail on any route defined as legitimate under international law, regardless of China's expansive territorial claims. He says Britain has a duty to insist on freedom of navigation in international waters. Kos Temenes, NTD News.
The meat processing industry had shortages even before the pandemic. Now, the track and trace app is telling workers to isolate for 10 days. Production lines may have to close. NTD's Patrick Hayden brings us this report.
The UK's CCP virus tracing app is telling workers to isolate. For Britain's meat processing industry, it's a problem and threatens the closure of production lines.
Something like 5 to 10% being pinged by this app and being told to self-isolate for 10 days. And if that continues, that's putting considerable pressure on the plant at a time when things are getting busy here.
The British Meat Processors Association says things were already tough before the pandemic hit because of Brexit.
And actually, probably about the time that Brexit happened 2 or 3 years ago, we had something like nearly 70% of our staff were actually mainly from Europe.
Now many have gone back to their home countries in Europe. Many were from Poland, which has experienced an uptick in the economy. A favourable exchange rate has also helped push that along. The use of the virus track and trace app is not mandatory, and the amount given by employers for their time off varies. Some are putting their employees on sick pay, which is considerably lower than the standard wage, and some are not being paid at all.
So, there's enormous amount of sort of pressure on them to actually sort of pay, and sort of carry on paying. But of course, we're in an industry where the margins are really tight.
He says he thinks the wages for the workers have gone up about 10 to 15%, but they can't push up their prices for selling the meat. Alan says the recent hot weather means barbecues are out and demand is rising, but the staff shortage is slowing business. In addition, there is now competition for the workers from other industries like hospitality. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
On Monday, the Royal Albert Hall opened at full capacity for the first time in 16 months. Thousands of audience members enjoyed a concert to mark the hall's 150th anniversary. NTD's Kos Temenes has the story.
Prestigious London venue Royal Albert Hall reopened at full capacity on Monday for the first time since March 2020. CEO Craig Hassall says it's their longest closure since World War II. Royal Albert Hall makes most of its money from ticket sales and donors. They lost £60 million due to the closure and took a £20 million loan from the government.
This is the worst situation we've been in for an awfully long time, but I'm confident now that we're back on our feet and performing again, we can trade our way out of our deficits.
Hassel says though they are allowed to open without restrictions, they have made changes to keep performers and patrons safe.
We've undertaken a massive ventilation program, about £1 million is spent to make the air cleaner and fresher and all sorts, as well as cleaning regimes inside the hall itself. So all the public areas, all back of house, are being cleaned regularly with hospital-grade viricides.
Nearly 300 performers were involved in Monday night's concert, celebrating the hall's 150th anniversary.
We had our first rehearsal yesterday, and when the first few bars of music happened, I think everyone was just a little bit damp in the eye department.
The production featured stars including actor Michael Sheen, musician Melanie C. and sports star Nicola Adams. About 85% of the tickets were sold. The Royal Albert Hall was opened by Queen Victoria in 1871 and named in memory of her husband. Cos Temenes, NTD News.
While the Royal Albert Hall can reopen at full capacity, musical theatre impresario Andrew Lloyd Webber is not so lucky. His new production of Cinderella is now cancelled again. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the story from London's West End.
Theatre legend Andrew Lloyd Webber has announced he is closing his new London production, Cinderella, after a cast member tested positive for COVID-19. Webber says the rest of the cast tested negative, but restrictions mean they must isolate.
I just felt that with the guidelines as they are at the moment that we simply couldn't go ahead. And I think one of the difficulties for us is that, you know, with theatre, you know, we can't carry on like this. We just simply can't.
The high-profile new stage show of Cinderella was due to open on Tuesday. Webber says despite calls, he will not open the production on Broadway, but he didn't announce a new opening date or whether the production will be cancelled.
I'm a Brit and we've got a fantastic cast, and so we will open here, but who knows, 2084? I don't know.
Webber says theatre is the lifeblood of cities, but the government doesn't seem to understand this.
It's not just about even our actors, or it's about all of the small people who depend on us. It's everybody from the taxi drivers to the restaurants to the people who work, the dry cleaners even. You know, it's an endless list.
Webber is the creator of hit shows including Cats and Phantom of the Opera. He is one of the most influential and successful figures in the theatre world. He says theatre is on its knees and can't function with current isolation restrictions.
I just beg them to realise that we have the testing systems, we have everything in place, we have every single thing we could possibly have in place to keep our casts, our backstage crews, our audiences safe. And just allow us to get on with our job.
Cinderella has already suffered several delays due to changing government restrictions. Let's hope the fairy godmother comes to the rescue. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
Still to come, renting designer clothes is gaining popularity. Even Harrods has a fashion rental pop-up. Find out more after the break. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.